Hello, you are listening to Occupy Radio London on Resonance 104.4 FM. I'm Alison Playford and I'm with Mark Weaver and Katrin Redfern.
Hey.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. Welcome to Occupy Radio London.
It's awesome to be back on Resonance 104. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, man. Hi, Resonance. Thank you for having us back. We're really happy to be back. Speaking to you from the front line of the 99%. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we got on today's show.
What's on today's show,
guys?
Yeah. Okay. Well, for a start, we've got a lovely girl called Maria, and you can find out lots more about her in the second half. But she is basically an insane eco-warrior who's been defending us all from the terrors of fracking.
A very sane eco-warrior.
Sorry. Very sane, very approachable, very representative person who we need more of.
And Katrin, what else have we got on today's show?
Today we're going to be giving an update on the universal basic income. See where that campaign is at the moment.
We're juggling microphones around a little bit.
Katrin's microphone, guys. Sorry about that. I just made the head pop off.
Is this working? This one working?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about universal basic income and all kind of other different stuff in the Occupy news, what's happening with Occupy around the world, because I've been looking at being very interested in some things that Paul Mason has been saying recently about. Paul Mason is the guy from Channel 4 who wrote Why It's Kicking Off Everywhere, How It's Kicking Off Everywhere. Paul Mason is predicting a year of a lot of unrest and action around the world in 2014. This is the year supposedly that a lot of stuff around the world is
blatantly going to be such a good
off.
year. Come on, honestly, 2013 was kind of rocking here and there, but I think we can do better than that.
I think we can do a lot better than that. I think the people are going to take to the streets. I think it's going to be amazing. I think we're going to bring.
Should we start with Twiggy Garcia?
Yeah. So the first thing we're going to speak to you about Occupy News is one of our favourite little activities that happens across the country is when people attempt to do a citizen's arrest on Tony Blair. And a legend called Twiggy Garcia has done an amazing attempted citizen's arrest on Tony Blair. So basically, Twiggy is a waiter in a restaurant in London, and he became aware that Blair was having dinner in the basement of his restaurant, decided to make a choice to quit his job, go up to Tony Blair and say to him, Tony Blair, I'm arresting you for crimes against peace. Please come with me to the local police station. So if anybody doesn't know, if ever you see Tony Blair, this is what you have to do. Go up to him, put your hand on his arm and tell him that you're arresting him for crimes against peace. And there's actually a bounty that you can collect if you do this.
I know, in the middle of a recession, right? There's a solution, guys. I mean, there are alternatives. I mean, we're in the middle of a quadruple dip recession or whatever it is. Nobody can find work and things, but there's a bounty on a war criminal's head and we all hate him. So,
yeah. So you actually get paid for attempting to citizens arrest Tony Blair. And it's a simple thing to do, yeah. So go to arrestblair.org if you want to find out more about how you can do that. And also, it's just, it's good for the morale, I think, around the world if people just annoy Tony Blair wherever he goes.
So what you're saying is, even without the bounty, it would just be good.
It's a good fun, yeah. I've kind of got this thing where I want people to start citizens arresting Blair, in different costumes and with different approaches and stuff. I think we can start going, because it happens so often now that he's being dogged by people trying to arrest him for crimes against peace. I think people need to, kind of jazz it up a bit and do it a bit more funkily.
Does he generally have security with him when he's out to dinner and on the town?
Yeah, totally.
If I was Tony Blair, I would have some security with me.
Yeah, but actually quite often the security obviously try to intervene with the people who are doing the citizen's arrest. But in this case, with what happened with Twiggy Garcia and the restaurant, which happened a few days ago, where Blair was attempted to be citizens arrested, the security were actually upstairs and Twiggy and Blair were downstairs. So Twiggy said to Blair, I'm arresting you for crimes against peace. And then they just had a conversation. Usually these things are over in a flash, but this one, they were actually having a conversation. And then Blair's son went upstairs to get the security, and Twiggy, good sense man, legged it and went off before the security got there. So he didn't even get assaulted by the security, so it was an all-round bonus win. Yeah, that was pretty cool. So well done, Twiggy. Applause to you.
Woohoo.
From us, you utter legend. And everybody's encouraged to continue on arresting Blair.
Even if he gets arrested, just arrest him again. Just keep arresting him.
Yeah. All right. So I think the next thing we're going to talk about on the Occupy News is the All London Squatters meeting. You going to tell us about that, Mark?
Yeah, why not? Wicked evening on Monday evening. It was in a undisclosed location. It was full of 50-odd people. I was there, and they're all beautiful, amazing people. These are the people who are turning abandoned, empty buildings, usually owned by wealthy landlords who have dozens of them and left them empty for years. They're turning them into art spaces, housing projects, anything from political projects, and doing amazing things. So yeah, it was great to have 50 of them in a room, and it looks like there's some pretty exciting things on the horizon for the squatting movement in London. So I should probably tell you about some of them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's one of the organisations.
I'm sorry, I didn't realise this was stuff that you were actually going to tell us about. I thought it was.
I just didn't want to
find out this stuff when it happens after it's manifested.
Oh, look, believe you will find out some stuff that I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you some of the softer things you can know about. One of which is the Squash campaign. So they're a wicked campaign that have been basically speaking up for the people who live in abandoned buildings since they're getting terrorised by people like the Conservative Party and others. Campaigning to make sure squatting stays illegal because it provides homes for people. Anyway, they were at the meeting, and they're going to do some amazing fundraising events soon. These are going to be public-facing events where you can, if you're not familiar with squatting culture, you can come in from where you are to a squatted space. You can eat the vegan food that's usually come out of skips, which is amazing, by the way.
Usually really nice.
I'm not alone in this. I've got a low standard, but other people...
I didn't get sick.
Yeah, the studio engineer knows what I'm talking about.
No, my trousers came from... I squatted too.
There you go. They are everywhere. They're taking over. Anyways, Squash was there, and they're amazing. Check out their website, squashcampaign.org, and they'll tell you about the events they're going to do. There was other groups like Made Possible by Squatting that have been basically doing what it says on the tin. They've been showing people what squatting has actually brought to the UK and other places in terms of culture, in terms of ideas, in terms of social justice, and they're going to be doing some amazing things too. And interestingly, there was also the London, well, it's actually just called the Eviction Resistance Network. So it's quite an underground thing. This is a support network for people who live in abandoned buildings, and it's to make sure that if bailiffs and landlords and sometimes police come around to evict them, that we can demonstrate outside and try and help them keep their home. But what's interesting about it is that the website's been getting more and more visitors from renters nowadays. So more and more so, it seems that renters are actually typing into Google eviction resistance, and so this could be an interesting union. In fact, well, I'm not going to be subtle about it. This should be where it goes. This should be renters and squatters fighting for their rights to decent, affordable housing. That's the future, as far as I'm concerned. So
cool. I'm just going to reiterate this slightly because I know the first time I heard about it, it kind of took a while for me to actually get my brain around what it means. What it means is, if bailiffs are coming to evict you, whether you're a squatter or a renter, there's a way of collecting community activists around you and resisting the eviction and retaining your home.
Yeah, non-violent, peaceful, happy, jolly, with banners, music, all sorts of stuff, even free food and all of this. It's not a big deal, and you can end up living in a place for much, much longer. And in some of the rarer cases, you can actually end up negotiating better deals and being able to stay where you live. And that's a hell of a lot better than people sleeping on the streets, isn't it?
Yeah, so if nasty bailiffs are coming to kick you out, you're not alone. There's a way of engaging with people to get some support, and you can go to...
It's the Eviction Resistance Network's blogspot. So if you Google Eviction Resistance Network, you should find them. And all of these groups, I won't say much more about it because there's so much more to say, but all of these groups like Squash and Eviction Resistance Network and what was the other one? Made Possible by Squatting, they all need, if you're interested in that kind of thing, they all need as many people to volunteer as possible. ASS is another one, Advice Service for Squatters. As many people who want to get involved, wicked people to meet, wonderful skills to learn, good stuff to do. So
wicked. And big up to the squatters in general, because they've been facing a legal campaign to make squatting of different kinds of buildings more and more difficult over the last year or so. And, you know, they don't always get the greatest press, and they're a massive and important part of the resistance. So nice one. Big up to you guys. Cool. All right. So, Catherine.
So related to giving people a little bit more stability in their lives, unconditional basic income is a movement that has been around in various guises over the years, going back to at least Thomas Paine. I think even during the enclosures movement, there were the first sort of utterings that we needed to guarantee that people had some kind of basic wage that wasn't predicated on being a member of the workforce. So this is something that's kind of gaining steam at the moment on various fronts. So most recently, the European Citizens Initiative has been mounting a campaign for signatures and basically creating a network to kind of settle in for the long haul and put pressure on the European Commission and other EU authorities to implement studies and pilot projects so that we can kind of get this off the ground and see it in action and see, to what extent would we have to negotiate rents. Just kind of fleshing out, it's an experiment to see what this would look like. If people suddenly were not required to, work to stay alive.
I think it would look quite nice.
I think it would look quite nice too. It brings up really interesting issues about the questions of, the nature of value. What is really socially necessary labor.
Yeah.
So if you want to get involved, there's a meeting tomorrow of the European Citizens Initiative. That's at the Cross Keys Pub, which is near Bank Tube Station, tomorrow evening at 7.
I think the group is actually called Basic Income UK, which you can find them on Facebook as well. So that's probably helpful. So
that is helpful.
And tomorrow is going to be Thursday because this is going to go up on YouTube. I would think this broadcast as well. So,
it certainly is.
Depending on what day you're listening.
Well,
tomorrow we're referring to is Thursday, the 23rd.
The 23rd of January. And if you can't make it for that, there's also another cool project coming up. It's the People's Parliament. So the People's Parliament is basically taking over the Parliament and using it for what it was originally meant to be used for, which is deeply engaging political talk about the issues that really matter in our lives. So they've got a really great bunch of sessions lined up. You should check out the People's Parliament website. And on March 4th, Citizens' Income. There's going to be a conversation about that with some great speakers. So definitely head on to that. And lastly, Avaz is also looking for signatories right now, and they're going to combine that with the almost 300,000, I think, signatures they've already gathered to make this like a really strong presentation
in support of UBI,
EC.
in support of universal basic income. Okay,
yes,
amazing. So we'll post the link to the Avaz petition for universal basic income when we post this on our YouTube page, which will be on Occupy London TV, I think, won't it?
Yeah, you'll be able to find all of this stuff on occupylondon.org.uk, and the YouTube channel's there, and it's got us on it. So.
Cool.
And it's nice to know that this is kind of an international thing. Like in the States, there's the U.S. Big Network, which is working on the same thing. And there's a Congress coming up, a big Congress in Montreal. So everyone's welcome to submit papers and get involved with that. So this is a worldwide thing.
And it's, I was saying earlier, there's been a proposal sent to the Scottish Parliament. The Scottish Parliament are considering bringing in universal basic income. There's a national referendum in Switzerland. So the closest country to actually bringing in a basic income is Switzerland at the moment. So like you say, there's a really big movement coming all around the world to support universal basic income, and it's a reform, but I've been calling it a revolution within a reform because it facilitates people to live their life in such a way that it completely takes us away from being controlled by the need to work in unnecessary ways or be financially abused through corporate system as we do now. It's a complete, it would end homelessness, it would reduce domestic abuse. It's just the most amazing thing. So find out loads more about universal basic income because it's on the way in and it's going to change the world.
It would be nice as well. We wouldn't live in a society where we just paraded vulnerable people in front of bureaucratic systems to decide whether they're deserving or poor enough or sick enough or whatever, disabled enough, and all of these horrible ways to categorize people. That'd be nice if we got rid of that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good. That'd be like some
dreamer
kind of
man,
testament.
Dreamer, but but
Yeah.
not the only
Hey,
one.
you know, I mean, I also think like this issue really kind of highlights like the poverty of imagination that you see, you know, when you say to people, well, hang on, you're going to give everybody, you know, just a basic sum of money to survive. I mean, then they're just, you know, you're not going to see anyone wanting to do anything anymore. No one's going to want to contribute. And it's like, really, do you think so little of people that you don't think that anyone has any motivation to do anything other than a paycheck? That's a pretty dismal view of humankind.
People will still be flocking to work at McDonald's. Nothing will change.
Well, actually, I mean, the way it supposedly will work is that jobs which are now have difficult working conditions and low wages will have to be paid at a better rate, and people will have to be treated better because the onus will be on the employers to provide good conditions to get the workers in, as opposed to like now where people basically have to put up with any kind of conditions that are offered to them because they have to, you know, work for low wages, and the onus is upon them to pay in the way that it is in the, you know, so the society is kind of set up the wrong way round, is the way I see it right now, and it would flip that whole thing in a very beautiful way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That was a nice little pause of idealistic visioning, wasn't it? Ooh, back to the grimy real world. You want to hear about the student demo?
Yeah.
So there was a student demo. It happened today, only a few hours ago. I was there. It was at the University of London. And so if you haven't been following what's going on, it's pretty exciting stuff. The students, they began a while back by occupying Senate House, which is on the University of London campus. They had 10 demands, and what was interesting is, one of the things that was interesting was that they were crossing over. They were addressing many issues to do with their own tuition fees, their own debts, the privatization of the university, the rights of the cleaning staff, what else? Also to do with the wages of the lecturers and things. So really crossing over lots and lots of things. So a very politically noble campaign. Anyway, they were brutally thrown out of the Senate House within a few hours, and that sparked a little bit of angst in the student population, which then resulted in a Cops Off Campus demo, which had several thousand people, a lot of them bearing shields made out of cardboard and polystyrene, and then sort of the images of famous books on the front of them, sort of
like revolutionary books.
Yeah, and 50 Shades of Grey as well. That was my favourite. But,
really?
Yeah, it's true. I'm not making it up.
Some joker did that.
Yeah, it was great. You had 1984 and all these things, and there was this person who had 50 Shades of Grey.
What a legend.
I thought that was pretty good. So anyway, today in the new year, they're carrying on. They're not stopping. There was a demo with several hundred people, all sorts of issues being brought up, and it's quite diverse. They've got people raising the issue of Mark Duggan and police brutality, and again, tying a lot of things together. And it's coming from a very kind of grassroots place. It's not really coming from one specific organization. It's many, many student groups and many autonomous groups coming together and organizing in a sort of horizontal way. So anyway, I spoke to one of the organizers from SOAS, and her name, I can't see it. Oh, it's Maham Hashmi. And I spoke to her outside University of London. I'm going to play it off the dictaphone. So
this is like just a few hours ago or something.
Yeah, just a few hours ago. So she can say better than any of us what the demo is about today. So what's this demonstration outside the University of London about today?
Well, it's about various things. It's about, but I think if we were to sum it up in a nutshell, it would be about reclaiming our voices, because for too long in the recent years we've seen the media, the institutions, the government, and everyone kind of either telling us what to think or taking away our right to have independent voices and thoughts. So it's about reclaiming spaces, and so I mean we're talking about a lot of things today. So Saving ULU, which is the University of London's federal student union, but it's also about the strikes that are coming up, both for lecturers and staff and cleaning staff that are going to be on strike next week. And it's about Cops Off Campus, because we've seen an escalation of police brutality on campus. But it's not specifically or only about like the copper punching a student. It's more about the day-to-day effect of police stopping and searching black students, or like doing stints with the BIA, Border and Immigration Agency, and stopping international students and making their life so much more difficult, as if it wasn't difficult enough. And so, yeah, that's kind of a few of the things we're here about.
Cool. So this part of the student movement has been sort of very self-organised, hasn't it? There's lots of different groups coming together. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I imagine a lot of people listening might think that this is under some sort of central umbrella.
Yeah, no, we haven't had a central umbrella for a long time. So it's just local organic groups, and each university has several different groups of different political ideas, and that's what I was talking about when reclaiming like our voices, because within the student movement right now there's like a lot of different voices, and we're like creating a space where we can debate our internal differences if we have any, or like start talking towards like what kind of a world we want to live in, and so talk about what kind of an education system we want for this world we live in.
Mm-hmm. So you've got a national demonstration in Birmingham coming up, and if people want to get involved and pay attention to this movement or get involved in it, support it, how can they do that?
Just Google things like Save ULU, Cops Off Campus, and just kind of the main Save Our Universities, all that kind of stuff.
Great. Yeah. All right, well, thank you for talking.
That's okay, thank you.
Yeah, she was cool. So, if you got all that, just Google Cops Off Campus, Save ULU, support the students, they rock. Let's have a massive student movement.
Yeah, man. So you are listening to Occupy Radio London on Resonance 104.4 FM, and we're getting quite a far way through the Occupy news now. So that's some kind of hurricane of action in your mind of what the occupiers, associated people and general lefties have been up to.
General shenanigans, yeah.
In London recently, and it's going on. So big up to all our crew, everyone who's been involved in that. Rock on. What else are we going to talk about? Yeah. Oh, so
it's one of my favourite topics.
Speaking of total legends, occupiers and associated crew who have been doing something cool, there was a thing last year which was called Occupy versus the Arms Trade, and this was when the Dicey Arms Fair, which is the largest international arms fair, was taking place in London. And this takes place in London every 2 years, and it's when 20,000 or so arms traders come and do their kind of dirty business of selling their bombs and their guns and their gas and all of that on our streets of London.
It's wicked.
It's amazing, yeah. So lovely activists come out and try and get in the way of that and kind of screw it up a little bit, as we like to do. So that's all good. And some excellent activity happened with that on against Dicey last year to stop the arms fair. And a lot of those people are now in court. So over February, there's all sorts of various different court dates. There's a crew of Christian activists who I don't even know what they did. What did the Christians do?
They basically
locked onto something or got dragged off something.
The Dicey Arms Fair is at the XL Exhibition Centre. Is that what you call it? It's at the XL Centre. Yeah. And it has a few entrances, and these particular ones, I believe, they sat down, cross-legged, arms linked, and blocked off the main entrance for a while.
So a load of Christians are getting prosecuted for doing that, which is, that's a good, some
Send
justice.
them to jail.
Yeah.
Send them to jail. Blocking the arms dealers.
You've stopped people trying to bomb people. What
It's
are you
outrageous.
thinking? Big up that crew, big up that Christian crew. And there's another crew that I know our lovely, beautiful friend Melanie Strickland laid down in front of a lorry.
We like to dramatise it a bit. She dived in front of a lorry.
Did she dive in front of a lorry?
Well, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. Well, she didn't get squashed. She was all right, but she did stop a lorry. So big up Mel. And she's now being prosecuted for doing that as well.
Obstructing the highway, standard.
Yeah, so, well done, guys. You're doing an amazing job. So if you want to support the lovely activists who are now being persecuted for trying to interfere with the arms fair, or for effectively interfering with the arms fair, you can go to www.stopthearmsfair.org.uk. And you can support them when they're at court. You can do all sorts of things to stand by them because they've taken their action and now they're, getting in some trouble for it.
Yeah,
So-
it's a really sore campaign from the arms dealers' perspective. The arms dealers like nothing more than for no one to be talking about it and just ignoring everything they do. And these guys have been putting them in the media, getting politicians to talk about it, shutting down the arms fair. Like every time there's a court case, there's journalists outside, go down, support, big it up, spread their blogs, everything.
So you were saying you wanted to change the name, weren't you? From
Oh, right. Well, I just, I'm fixated. I think we should just call it Mel versus the arms trade.
Yeah.
Because Mel's my friend. And she's also, I think she's taking some action to like start suing some arms dealers or arms companies or whatever. She's proper got a bee in her bonnet, bless her.
Yeah. You can actually, she did an amazing interview with the artist Taxi Driver. So Google Mel Strickland Chunky Mark or Mel Strickland artist Taxi Driver if you want to find out more what Mel's been up to. She's a rockin' one-woman legend.
I interviewed her actually as well.
Did you?
Yeah. You can go to the Occupy London YouTube channel, which is YouTube/Occupy LSX, and it's entitled The War Machine.
Rock on. That's not Mel though, the War Machine.
What, that voice I just did? Like,
No, don't worry.
over my head, listeners.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right. Well, moving along. Next on our London roundup here. So Occupy has been campaigning, trying to draw attention to the latest round of free trade agreements, as they are euphemistically known as, and the latest round, which are a plethora of acronyms. We have TAFTA, which is the Transatlantic Free Trade Area, which is hopefully, in the eyes of the movers and shakers of the world, going to be organized via two vehicles, the TTIP and the TTP. Basically, in short, one is for the Atlantic region, one's for the Pacific region. That's what you need to know. So anyway, we wouldn't know actually anything about these were it not for some documents leaked in the WikiLeaks. So we still know very little because all of this stuff, all the negotiations on for this goes on behind closed doors. It's just a bunch of corporate lawyers and.
If you look at who's actually doing the negotiating, you pretty much know where you stand.
Why? Who is it?
Well, it's like if you went down to Canary Wharf and said, these are the people we're going to give your children to or something like that. It's like HSBC, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs. I mean, it's every single demonic, world-destroying financial entity you could imagine, all just in a room together deciding how trade's going to work for the next ever.
I have to have this explained to me like in a really basic way because there's just nothing about it that engages my mind. So what we're talking about is free trade agreements, and these things are things that in an international level transfer money into private pockets. Am I right? What's going on with this?
It's basically it's seeing things as being barriers to trade, things that have normally been long and hard fought for. So we're talking about the minimum wage, child labor laws, environmental laws, health and protection, safety laws. So these things are being sort of reframed as being barriers to profit.
Right.
So if companies feel that, let's say, there's been some cases recently between Canada and the States via NAFTA or FTAA, which is kind of the precursor to all this. So basically, there's been this kind of mini war going on between Canada and the U.S. where chemical companies, let's say, that want to put an additive in oil, in petroleum, will say that they should be able to import it. Canada will say, well, we have substantial evidence that is a neurotoxin and causes nerve damage. In which case, the American company then sues the Canadian government and says that your environmental protection laws are getting in the way of our potential profit. And the case in question I'm thinking of, the Canadian government then had to shell out $13 million to that company in loss of revenue. So this is basically in a nutshell what these things are about. And looking at NAFTA and the FTA, which have been kind of kicking around since the 90s, under Clinton, they came in. We can kind of see what we have in store if this latest round go through. So, it's really a shame because whatever you think of governments, the state, etc., that is kind of the democratic vehicle that we have, and to have it totally superseded by by corporations, is obviously deeply problematic.
Yeah, one of the fun parts is
I just understood that a bit. Woo!
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations. Hey, I've been trying for so long, Catherine. You've really done a good job. So anyways, yeah, one of the really cool things about this agreement that is going to make our lives really interesting is that they're trying to set something up, and I don't want to get the acronym wrong. I believe it's called ISDS or something like that. And it basically means that if corporations and investors, so big multinational conglomerates and stuff, if they feel that their investor rights are not being treated fairly, then they are legally entitled to sue the governments of the countries that's happening in. So a scenario might be if the government of the UK says, well, we'd like you not to privatise and buy up so much of the NHS because we've got people in the streets protesting. The new trade law will actually say, well, sorry, it's actually illegal. You have to let us privatise it, otherwise we're going to sue the government for $100 billion, that kind of thing. So it pretty much takes the power right out of our own government's hands and puts it in multinational corporations.
That just sounded really, I just understood it even more, and that sounded really, really, really depressing. So
it's also another thing is minimum wage. I mean, in the U.S., post FTAA, we saw like a huge drop in average wages as jobs were kind of lost to the global south. It just kind of becomes a race to the bottom where workers the world over are pitted against each other as far as who's willing to work for the lowest wages. So something interesting that I happened upon today was that actually activism is increasingly seen as a barrier to trade. Because you don't want to set up your oil pipeline if there's going to be a bunch of like pesky people climbing all over it and trying
people
to
like
shut
Maria.
it down.
just like Maria, who's laughing in the background. Yeah.
And you might have to pay extra security to keep them away, etc. So increasingly corporations, especially oil corporations, are putting pressure on governments that they need to kind of put the smackdown on activists.
Maybe that's why we're getting these stupid laws like the gagging law and the annoyance law and all these kind of ridiculous laws that are coming in.
And trying to paint environmental activists as these crazy extremists. Like that's a very deliberate kind of smear campaign of activists, which also, ends up sort of giving an impetus to increase police budgets. So it's also something else crazy. So Canada seems to be kind of leading the way in this kind of like smearing of activists as extremists in order to protect corporate profits.
I don't know, they're doing a pretty good job of that in England as well, I think, but we're going to talk to Maria about that in a little bit. So if you want to get involved with TTIP and in terms of stopping it, not in terms of helping it, how do you do that?
Well, you can go along to the Occupy website, and they're running an Occupy TIPP campaign at the moment. I believe they're meeting every 2 weeks, and yeah, that would be my first port of call.
Okay, amazing. So that's occupylondon.org.uk.
They're meeting every 2 weeks at the Unite office on Mondays, about 7ish, something like that. I can't remember which bi-weekly segment it is, but it's all on the website. And also they got a Facebook page, which I think is either Occupy the TTIP or Stop TTIP. See, one of the things you've got to love about this trade agreement, amongst all the other wonderful things about it, is just how they've called it TAFTA in the States, they've called it TTIP in Europe, they've based it on TPP, which is somewhere else, and then it's based on NAFTA, which then brings us TAFTA.
I have an alternative acronym for this whole subject, but I don't think I can say it at this time of night on the radio.
let's leave it. Let's just stop it, and we don't have to remember any of these acronyms anymore. We can just enjoy being people who still have a chance to change the world.
All right, cool. So that was the Occupy News. I hope you some of that kind of went into your brain. There's kind of a hell of a lot of stuff going on. So that was our little roundup of some of the things that have been happening in London.
Yeah, we've got to move on to a serious note, I think. Well, before we go into part 2, where we're going to speak to the lovely, the amazing, the special and awesome Maria, we need to mention what happened to our friend Chris O'Donnell the other day. It's
Yeah.
all over social media. I think he's still in Barton Moss protection camp, another anti-fracking camp where they're trying to stop the fracking drills.
Where Maria works, that's the connection.
Indeed. Anyways, he is an avid live streamer. He gets his phone out and he films things, and keeps the police in check and gives voice to the protesters and so on. And the other day he was filming the trucks going into the site, and he was just speaking to police. He was doing his thing, and then pretty much without warning, he was just set upon by loads and loads of police. And he was really badly and brutally assaulted by them. And we don't want to just visit horrible things into your Wednesday evening, but we are going to play some of the sounds that came from his live stream so you can get a sense of it.
So just to let you know, it's probably worth putting in a trigger warning at the beginning of this track, because it is actually, this was a very distressing experience for this person, and this is we're playing the audio from the live stream that he created. So it's audio of him being beaten. So,
but only a short bit of it. After that, because we feel it is important to document these things and give solidarity to him, we'll put on a piece of music so we can lay back and relax, and then go into the second half. So anyway, this is Chris from his live stream.
I reported a crime to you. Chief Inspector, a simple answer, please. You're all on video. Stop acting the way you are.
Keep going.
You will shame your own police force.
You want to obstruct police, all right?
I'm not obstructing any police. Really? Really? Why the brutality? Where was I obstructing any police? And I'm not fighting back or anything to assist the police in any way. Why are you kicking me for? What the hell are you doing up this side? My head! My head! Get it on!
Off me, officer. You've just beaten a load of people up down the other end now. Okay, so the GMP beating people up, beating people to the floor there. Nobody was resisting arrest, but they used extreme violence to bring the geezers on the floor, pushed an innocent bystander over. Unnecessarily. Twice one of the guys got pushed over. These guys are really excelling themselves today. Everyone's moving as fast as they can, officers. It's all on camera. You're shoving these people down the road on their peaceful protest in order to mess up your own water supply and poison your own grandchildren. You clever lads. You're a bunch of thugs, you are. You're a bunch of absolute thugs.
And you're listening to Occupy Radio London on Resonance 104.4 FM.
And that was some sounds from Barton Moss protection camp of some of the issues that have been going on with
The
police down there.
smooth, relaxing sounds of the Manchester police.
Yeah, of the nice, reliable.
So big up to Chris O'Donnell, man. Like, he's a hard-working activist, and he was pretty badly damaged from that
Like,
episode
what
with the
damages
police.
did he sustain?
He's got a lot of bruises to his face. He's been badly
Fractured
shaken
his
up.
eye socket.
He was
Fractured
already a
his
man
eye
with
socket.
disabilities. He sometimes needs a cane to wander around. You know what I mean? He's like, wouldn't harm a fly.
Anyway, let's bring Maria in properly, because it's Maria that knows more about this and she can tell us about it. So, hey, this is Maria Sanders from Barton Moss Camp. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Woohoo! Woohoo! So you were just telling me, while that track was playing, you were telling me some more about what's happened with Chris and how that's played out.
Yeah, because he managed to capture all of it on film, the film's gone off to Al Jazeera and to The Guardian as well, and that's been released. And Manchester police are going to have a big question to answer as to why it happened, you know?
Yeah, because he's caught them on film just beating him, and you can see how ludicrous it is from that.
Yeah, there was absolutely nothing to provoke it. He wasn't even committing any sort of crime. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not that that would justify having your eye socket broken in the point of being arrested, but...
Yeah. Anyway, let's take a rewind. Maria, would you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to be involved with environmental activism?
Well, I used to do a lot of sort of marine conservation stuff and just ended up in the middle of a revolution, which kind of triggered me to come in and be involved in other types of activism. Got back into the UK and the anti-fracking campaign was a really kind of big one. Went up to Lancaster, which is where sort of everything started off in the country. Spent a week in a really wet field.
Nice. Why do so many activist stories include sentences like that? Yeah.
That was brilliant. That was Camp Frack 2. That was in May this year. A little bit later on, we went down to Balcombe, where we ended up with another camp that was 2 months long. And now we've got Barton Moss Camp up near Manchester.
Mm-hmm. So what's the deal over fracking? Why is there such a big deal over fracking? What is fracking?
Hydraulic fracturing. It's a way of extracting natural gas from shale rock, which doesn't give up natural gas particularly easily. It's forcing water and chemicals into the rock to fracture it. There's water contamination issues and just generally the climate issues. We don't need to be going for more fossil fuels in this absolutely mad, extreme way that involves so many truck movements, so many different well pads in a really populated country like England. It's just ridiculous.
And I read there's something mad, like 1,000 fracking sites denoted for the UK alone.
Yeah, I think 60% of the country's up for fracking wells, and you can have up to 8 in a square mile.
Woohoo! Let's pump poisonous chemicals into our whole country! Yay!
So what's it like living on the Barton Moss camp then? Because I haven't actually had a chance to follow it. So is it a mad and spooky place filled with people with all sorts of conspiratorial ideas, or is it some sort of community-led thing? What's it like? What's the vibe like?
It's hugely community-led, and it has to be. It's miserable. It's wet. It is cold now, and
I forgot. Actually, it does rain pretty much all the time in
Manchester. Yeah, it's just constantly raining, and you're on a bog. The mosses are literally boggy, so everything's had to be raised up onto pallets so that we don't sink all the time.
How many people are there at the moment?
There's about 25, 30 in residence, and a lot of the locals from Manchester and the local areas come down on a daily basis. So some days there's 100 people there. On the solidarity marches at the weekend, we can get up to 400, I think we've had.
That was a big one recently. It was reported as having about 1,000 people. Yeah. So.
And this is every Sunday, isn't it? They have Solidarity Sunday. People can go down and visit.
Oh, well, you can go down and visit on any day. It doesn't have to be Solidarity Sunday at all. You can always go down and show solidarity, but there is big marches every Sunday.
And there's even free buses. I know there's free buses that go down from London, and there's probably free buses that go down from other areas as well.
That's for a big solidarity march that's on the 26th of January. There isn't every Sunday that the buses are organised for. It's just the 26th of January.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do people get a free bus on the 26th then, if they want to?
It's not free. It can be if you can't
it's a
afford.
£5, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a donation request of £5 if you can afford it. If not, and you want to go and support and there's space on the bus, I think it's info@Frackoff.
Frackoff or Frackoff website or
don't be put off by the name. They're not talking to you.
So there's Katrin, there's been a lot more fracking has happened in the US already, hasn't it? So
yeah, fracking's got a lot longer history in the US, which I'm hoping will provide activists here in the UK and elsewhere with kind of the ammunition that we didn't have in the US when this was getting started. So you've likely heard by now that the U.S. is expected to overtake Russia and Saudi Arabia this year as the world's biggest producer of oil and gas. And that is all thanks to fracking. So yeah, it's all thanks to hydraulic fracking and horizontal drilling. At what cost, one might ask? So I just put together like a tiny little roundup of little tidbits of things just from like the last few weeks.
Okay.
From the States that have to do with fracking.
Cool.
For a long time the jury was kind of out. Is this gonna affect groundwater, yay or nay? And according to an investigation, the AP just concluded water pollution from fracking has been confirmed in Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, and Texas, where there have been literally hundreds of complaints. That's frightening enough. But there's also the fact that, leaving aside that gas and oil companies aren't required to disclose exactly which chemicals they're using, the actual information about water contamination scope and severity is really hard to come by. Mm-hmm. So the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency in the States, is not, keeping a rigorous control of this. It's not even collecting this data. It's just, the AP decided to go through the records and see how many people had lodged complaints that their well water was contaminated. So that's what's so scary. Is that it's not being documented. It's not being kept track of, and we also know that. That people directly affected by fracking-related problems are sometimes silenced by the gas and oil industry under non-disclosure agreements, which campaigners say that secrecy kind of helps the industry resist more stringent environmental and health controls by burying evidence of water contamination and health problems. Recently, there was a whole family was put under non-disclosure agreements when they had to move off of their 10-acre farm due to pollution. And even their two children, their 7 and 10-year-olds, were put under lifelong non-disclosure agreement about what had happened to their land and their health.
It does sound like, if you were a person like with a slightly skeptical eye, or a person who's, dabbles in like a bit of suspicion here and there, you might raise an eyebrow or two at that sort of thing. Why are they getting whole families to sign non-disclosure agreements?
There's $750,000, that family.
What,
yeah,
sorry?
they got $750,000 settlement.
Bloody hell.
Okay. So that was just number one. I just have a couple other facts here. So in the last couple weeks in the States, due to fracking, deaths on the job have increased 100%. That's actually since 2009. And the reason for that is that due to this huge elevation in production, the oil companies have added about 23% more workers. And these workers are not being adequately trained, and they're having to work overtime. And this is resulting in, as I said, a 100% increase in deaths. And then in addition to the groundwater pollution, there's also air pollution. So researchers in Pennsylvania just found that proximity to fracking increases the likelihood of low birth weight by more than half. So the most likely
it's getting more and more twisted and apocalyptic.
Yeah, and the chances of a low APGAR score, this is a new word to me, the APGAR score, which is a summary measure of the health of newborn children, doubles in these areas. So the most likely culprit is air pollution, because oil and gas operations have been found to release VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, and nitrogen oxides, which all contribute to ground level ozone.
Oh my days. Right, Maria, you're on the ground. This is what's coming in. So it's happening right now in Barton Moss. And so there's been a lot of issues with the police, as we've heard from what's happened to Chris these last few days. And I've got a note on my computer screen that says flare at helicopters. What's all that about?
Was it you, Maria? Did you shoot a flare at helicopters?
Of course not. Never, ever would I attempt something like that. There was a flare supposedly fired at a police helicopter, which was then a brilliant excuse for the police to raid the entire camp and try and dishearten everyone, which is basically what they're trying to do constantly, throwing everyone's bedding out of the tents into the wet, into the rain and into the muddy puddles so that no one had anything dry to sleep on. Yeah. And 2 people have been put up with threats to kill charges off the back of it. And
wow, it's just crazy. And what's actually going on is there's tents full of hippies down there trying to protect the environment. That's the reality.
Drinking pineapple juice and giving each other massages and all sorts of stuff.
yeah, nice free hugs. We did do a free hugs the other day, and all the frontline police were getting hugged. And despite their,
It just doesn't fit the bill, though, is it? You know, if you're going to send the militarized police force in to terrorize and ransack the place, you can't sort of say, well, we went in and they were all serving smoothies to each other and reading poetry. So we ransacked the place. You got to have something else to go on, haven't you?
All right, so our beautiful crew are down there. They're trying to keep the environment safe for our kids. Let's sort them out, people. Let's love them up. Let's see how much we can help them. So what are the ways to engage if you want to help at Barton Moss?
well, first and foremost, is always go down to the camp, you know. They've got the big solidarity march on the 26th, which should be good. There's going to be an action as well in London around the iGas headquarters, which is the company that's working up in Manchester at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I've heard whispers about this. Sounds like an exciting action. I don't think we can say that much yet.
Have we just blown something on the radio?
No, we haven't. Everybody just looked around for a second.
Okay, so there's an action in London at iGas.
But I don't know much about it. That's why I can't say much about it.
No, it's a group of people from Balcombe just coming up and having a demonstration.
Okay, well, in that case, I didn't blow something else then, don't worry.
All right, so I'm sure all the information for all of this kind of stuff is going to be on Frack Off website or BIFF, that's the other one, isn't it? Britain and Ireland Frack Free. Yeah, BIFF. And what's this? The EU is looking to put strict regulations on fracking so you can lobby your MP. What's that about?
Yeah, there was a ban put on temporarily in Romania, which has now been lifted on fracking because of pressure from the fracking companies. France has banned fracking as well. The fracking companies tried to do the same thing to put pressure on the companies and the government to release the ban. That didn't work, and the EU are trying to put in regulations which will effectively stop fracking.
Right.
Which is another good reason that we need to do something about these trade agreements, because they will certainly see a ban on fracking as impinging on their profit-making ability.
Inhibits trade, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the English fracking industry has just had a huge wave of investment come from French companies. We had 30 million from Total, 24 million from the Suez company.
Right.
They actually have this weird name for it. I'm pretty sure I've got it right. In the trade agreement literature, they call these things trade irritants. That's their official term. I'm pretty sure it's literally either trade irritants or trade annoyances or something like that. But I think it's irritants. Sounds technical, but it just kind of gets across the way they see it.
So you can lobby your MEP to support the anti-fracking motions within the European Parliament. That's one thing that you can do. Okay.
And go up and camp. Go up and camp, I would say. That's the bit I'm more inclined to do.
Yeah, go up and camp at Barton Moss.
And they're having victories as well. I mean, the Balcombe camp, was pretty astonishing and, pretty much, blew what was a movement that was, trying really hard to get above the surface and just blasted it out into the open. No.
Yeah. I mean, saying that last year was kind of slightly apocalyptic in some ways, in this country, there was definitely some front runners who did some amazing work, and the anti-frackers were right up the top in terms of, some of the incredible protest work that was done last year. Not to miss out anybody else, there was a lot of amazing crew going on, but I would say anti-fracking was one of the highlights of last year, and will be another of the highlights of this year. So get down there, get involved. It's truly, truly inspiring. And you don't have to do a role. We've been talking about some difficulties with police on camp and that kind of thing. You can take any kind of role you like. You can cook in the kitchen,
which will be very much appreciated by camp.
Yeah. If you want to go down and you want to support, you don't necessarily have to concern yourself that you're going to end up in any kind of difficult situation with the police or anything like that. There is a lot of support roles that you can do.
No, it has to be said. I went to the Balcombe camp and there were some arrests, but the vast majority of people don't get arrested. Actually, I didn't get arrested, so it's all good. You don't have to think.
Best time I had all summer.
Yeah, it was amazing. I had a great time at Balcombe. It was so good.
Yeah, so you don't have to think to yourself, well, I would go up to Barton Moss, but I don't want to get arrested. Okay, it doesn't quite work like that,
No. And yeah, we love you guys. If anyone, Barton Moss is listening to us tonight, we love you and you're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much.
Did anyone notice that the studio engineer just left the room?
Bye! Right, we've occupied the station, we've occupied the radio. That's it. Okay, guys, so Maria, is there anything else you kind of wanted to share with us, or...?
No, I guess so. Just, big love to everybody that's up north and going through all of the different troubles with the police and the cases and things, but everyone's doing it with a smile on their face still because, we're fighting the right fight.
All right, perfect. And thanks for coming and talking to us today. And
So should we end on some music? Okay. Thanks for everyone for listening to us. It's Occupy Radio London on Resonance 104.4 FM. We'll be coming back, and we're all over the internet as well. Catch up with us on the social media, etc., etc. The main place to look is Occupy London on Facebook and occupylondon.org.uk on the web. So we'll end. Thanks to Maria for coming in and talking. Thanks to Katrin for giving us all the American perspective and scientific analysis that we are not too good at doing.
Yeah.
And thanks to Alison, and I don't really feel like thanking
myself. You don't want to thank yourself. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
It's nice to be appreciated. Thanks, guys. Thanks. It feels really warm. So here's Seize the Day with Fracka Hacker.
Here's the news. Today, over 5,000 people have isolated themselves inside with those terrible things happening on those gas escaping all
I hear a tap, tap, fingers on the pad, they're mapping, pin pushing in the green and pleasant cushion. It's the tick-tack, talking of the nails in the coffin that they wanna take us off in. So I'm bound for Balkan, where the folk will make you welcome if you haven't come to tell them they need an oil well. If you're not somewhat, go at it with a billion smacker habit, getting high on jacking gases out of pre-Jurassic asses. So we'll frack, the frack is over, cracking the strata till the stratosphere's knackered. They could crack, the planet with the toxic spray, cracking on the fracking water planet. What the frack? Already I can see those quadrillion mosquitoes, and they all of them have got this exploratory proboscis, probing like the penis of an energy extremist, with a scheme to ream the seam where all the cream is in his dream. Horizontally hydraulic, shooting hydrochloric biocide polyacrylamide, so you can meet your holics while they surgically fracture every bone in Mother Nature, satiating fossil traders, but we'll all be paying later. So we'll frack, the frack is over, cracking the strata till the stratosphere's knackered. They will crack, the planet with the toxic spray, cracking on the fracking water planet. What the frack?
I don't know, Barry, I can't see a cop anymore. When I gotta stand here while they're destroying Mother Earth, I don't know what to do.
Clank of tanker traffic, impact, seismographic with their trash cans of cactus radioactive, sanctioned by some fracademic who is border sociopathic, cooking up bright flame stacks, flashing in a pan, flogging every drop of flammable calamity they can. Tell the methane leaking makes us all so fracking hot, we'll be gagging for whatever pure aquifer we got. So we'll frack, the frack is over, cracking the strata till the stratosphere's knackered. They would crack, the planet with the toxic spray, cracking up the fracking water planet. What the frack, the frack is over, cracking the strata till the stratosphere's knackered. They would crack, the planet with the toxic spray, cracking up the fracking water planet. What's the crack?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I want you to put your hands together now. I want you to put your hands together for a very special thing. Very special thing called fracking. That's right, every time you put your cooker on, you got light gas from my eyes. You ready?
So I'm clapping with the activists who cellophane packed with black clad lacquers turns a party with maracas to a collar grabbing fracas. Then a beat will slap us with infraction of the act. Hacks, yak, yak, fracking fiction is the fact, but we're the last ditch shooters for the future they attack. We are stronger than their wonder, so we'll keep on coming.